Hi readers, welcome back to Reads with Rune B with me, Rune B. Today we are continuing with Peter Pan, and so before we start, I have to remind our readers that if there are any monies made from the reading of Peter Pan, they will go straight to Greater Ormond Street Children's Hospital, and that a direct link to their donation page will be included in the comments section of each video. Thank you. Now, let's get on with our story. Chapter 9, The Neverbird. The last sound Peter heard before he was quite alone were the mermaids retiring one by one to their bedchambers under the sea. He was too far away to hear their doors shut, but every door in the coral caves where they lived rings a tiny bell when it opens or closes, as in all the nicest houses on the mainland. And he heard the bells. Steadily the waters rose till they were nibbling at his feet, and to pass the time until they made their final gulp, he watched the only thing on the lagoon. He thought it was a piece of floating paper, perhaps part of a kite, and wondered idly how long it would take to drift ashore. Presently he noticed an odd thing, and it was undoubtedly out upon the lagoon with some definite purpose, for it was fighting the tide, and sometimes winning, and when it won, Peter was always sympathetic to the weaker creature, and could not help but clapping. It was such a gallant piece of paper. It was not really a paper. It was the Neverbird, making desperate efforts to reach Peter on the nest, and by the working of her wings in a way she had learned since its nest had fallen into the water, she was able to some extent to guide her strange craft. But by the time Peter had recognized her, she was very exhausted. She had come to save him, to give him her nest, and though there were eggs in it, I rather wonder at the bird. For though he had been nice to her, he had also sometimes tormented her. I can only suppose that, like Miss Darling and the rest of them, she was melted because he had all his first teeth. She called out to him for what she had called out to him what she had come for, and he called out to her what was she doing there. But of course neither of them understood the other's language. In fanciful stories, people can sometimes talk to birds freely, and I wish for the moment I could pretend that this was such a story, but the truth is best, and I want to tell you only what really happened. Not only could they not understand each other, but they forgot their manners. I want you to get in the nest, the bird called, speaking slowly and as distinctly as possible, and then you can drift ashore. But I am too tired to bring it any nearer to you, so you must try to swim to it. What are you quacking about? Peter answered. Why don't you let the nest drift as usual? I want you, the bird said, and repeated itself all over. And then Peter tried slowly and distinctly. What are you quacking about? And so on. The Neverbird became irritated. They have short tempers. You dunderheaded little jay, she screamed. Why don't you do as I tell you? Peter felt that she was calling him names. And at a venture he retorted hotly. So are you. Then, rather curiously, they both snapped out the same remark. Shut up! Shut up! Nevertheless, the bird was determined to save him, if she could, and by one last mighty effort she propelled the nest against the rock, and then she flew up, deserting her eggs, so as to make her meaning clear. Then at last he understood, and clutched the nest, and waved his thanks to the bird as she fluttered overhead. It was not to receive his thanks, however, that she hung there in the sky. It was not even to watch him get into the nest. It was to see what he did with her eggs. There were 2 large white eggs. And Peter lifted them up Wren reflected. The bird covered her face with her wings, so as not to see the last of them, but she could not help but peeping between her feathers. I forgot whether I have told you that there was a stave on the rock, driven into it by some of the buccaneers long ago, to mark the site of some buried treasure. The children had discovered the glittering hoard, and when in a mischievous mood, used to fling showers of miters, diamonds, pearls, and pieces of eight to the gulls, who pounced on them for food, and then flew away raging at the scurvy trick that had been played upon them. The stave was still there, and on it Starkey had hung his hat, a deep tarpaulin, watertight, and with a broad brim. Peter put the eggs into this hat and set it into the lagoon. It floated beautifully. The Never Bird saw at once what he was up to, and screamed her admiration of him, and alas, Peter crowed his agreement with her, and then he got into the nest and reared the stave stave in it as if it was a mast, and hung up his shirt for a sail. At the same moment the bird fluttered down upon the hat, and once more sat snugly on her eggs. She drifted in one direction, and he was borne off in another, both cheering. Of course, when Peter landed, he beached his barge in a place where the bird would easily find it. But the hat was of such great success that she abandoned the nest. It drifted about till it went to pieces, and often Starkey came to the shore of the lagoon with many bitter feelings, and watched the bird sitting on his hat. As we shall not see her again, it may be worth mentioning here that all Never Birds now build in that shape of a nest, with broad brim, which youngsters take on an airing. Great were the rejoicings when Peter reached home, and under the ground, almost as soon as Wendy, who had been crying. I'm going to start again. Great were the rejoicings when Peter reached the home under the ground, almost as soon as Wendy, who had been carried hither and thither like a kite. By every boy had adventures to tell, but perhaps the biggest adventure of all was that they were several hours late for bed, and so this inflated them, and they did various dodgy things to get to stay up still longer, such as demanding bandages. But Wendy, who though glorying in having them all safe home, was scandalized by the lateness of the hour, and cried, to bed, in a voice that had to be obeyed. The next day, however, she was awfully tender, and gave out bandages to everyone, and they played till bedtime at limping about and carrying their arms in slings. And that is the end of chapter 9. Stay safe, keep reading, like, subscribe, and share. And we'll see you next time, readers. Bye for now.